Black waitress is fired for helping Barron Trump. Next day she gets the shock of her life. It was just another regular morning at the diner, the kind of quiet before the rush of the lunch crowd. Marie had always prided herself on her hard work and kindness. She had been working at the Bayview Diner for 5 years, serving the same regulars, listening to their stories, and doing her best to make them feel at home. But today was different. The door opened and in walked Barron Trump, as casual as anyone could be. No entourage, no fanfare, just him looking around like he was looking for peace. Marie didn't recognize him at first. He was just another man in a suit, his face partially hidden by a baseball cap. But when their eyes met, something clicked. There was an unspoken understanding in his gaze, a tiredness that matched her own. It was almost like he wasn't just a figure in the headlines, but a real person with real struggles. As he sat down, Marie approached him with the same warmth she gave every customer. "Morning, sir. What can I get for you?" she asked with a smile. Barron hesitated for a moment before replying, "Just a coffee, black, please." Simple enough. But as she went to get his order, Marie noticed the whispers from the other customers. A few eyes were on him. Murmurs started to rise, and she felt the unease in the air. Something was wrong, but Marie couldn't place it. She returned with his coffee, setting it down gently in front of him. "Anything else?" she asked, her voice steady despite the buzzing around her. "No," Barron replied quietly, looking up at her. His eyes were tired, distant, like he'd been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Marie nodded, and for a brief moment, the world outside seemed to quiet. She could feel the tension in the air, the uncomfortable stares from her coworkers and the patrons around her. But she didn't care. He was a person, not a headline. She treated him like she treated everyone else. After a while, when Barron had finished his coffee and was preparing to leave, Marie noticed something strange. A group of men in suits had entered the diner, walking past her and heading straight to Barron. She couldn't help but feel the chill in her spine as they spoke to him in hushed tones. Barron stood up, visibly upset, but he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he nodded, and those men turned and walked out. Marie felt a sense of unease flood through her. The tension in the diner had grown unbearable. Her instincts told her something was about to happen, but she couldn't place it. Was it just the presence of Barron Trump that made the room feel heavy? Or was there something more? A moment later, the owner of the diner, Carl, approached her with a stern look on his face. "Marie," he said in a low voice, "I need to talk to you in the back." She followed him nervously, her heart racing. Carl was never this serious. When they got to the back, he turned to her with a look of disappointment. "I saw what happened out there. You were speaking to him. You were too friendly with him." Marie was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "I was just doing my job." "Don't pretend like you didn't know who he was," Carl interrupted, his tone harsh. "You were supposed to stay out of it. He's trouble. And I won't have you causing problems in my diner. You're fired." Marie's heart dropped. Fired? For helping someone? For being kind? Her mind was racing. The unfairness of it all was overwhelming. She stood there, frozen for a moment, before she gathered her things and walked out of the diner, her thoughts swirling. As she stepped out into the cold morning air, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something much bigger going on. What had she done wrong? She had only offered kindness to a person who seemed to need it, someone who was being treated like an outsider in a room full of judgment, and now she was paying the price for it. But as she walked down the street, still reeling from the shock of losing her job, she had no idea that something incredible was about to happen, something that would change everything for her forever. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe for more twists, emotions, and unexpected turns. You won't want to miss what happens next. The next day, Marie woke up early, the weight of the previous day's events still heavy on her mind. She hadn't been able to sleep, tossing and turning, replaying the conversation with Carl over and over again. She couldn't understand what had gone wrong. She had simply done what felt right, treating Barron Trump like a human being, not a political figure. As she walked to the local coffee shop, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was from an unknown number. Curious, she hesitated before tapping it open. "Marie, I know what happened. I can help you." Meet me at the Bayview at 10 a.m. The message was brief, cryptic, and strange. Who was this person? And how did they know about what had happened with Barron? Her heart skipped a beat as she thought about the strange events of the previous day. What was going on? She had no choice but to find out. At exactly 10 a.m. Marie arrived at the Bayview, though she felt uneasy. It was a ghost of a place without the usual chatter, without the bustle of customers. She had to push open the door, the sound of the bell above it echoing in the stillness. To her surprise, Barron was already there, sitting at one of the booths in the back, his face serious, but with a hint of something else, something almost like concern. Marie, he greeted her with a soft nod, his voice quieter than the last time they spoke. I'm sorry about what happened yesterday. That wasn't right. Marie stood there, shocked, trying to process what was going on. She wasn't sure whether to feel grateful or confused. Was he here to make it right? Was this just some kind of trick? Why are you helping me? She finally asked, her voice breaking slightly. She had never imagined someone like Barron Trump would give her the time of day, let alone show up at a diner just to talk to her. Barron sighed deeply, looking out the window for a moment before he spoke again. Because what happened to you was wrong. You didn't deserve to lose your job for doing what was right, and I want to make sure you don't walk away from this with nothing. The words felt surreal. Marie couldn't wrap her head around them. Was this really happening? Did Barron Trump, of all people, care about her situation? What do you mean by that? She asked cautiously, her eyes narrowing slightly. He glanced around the diner, as though making sure they were alone. I know people, he said, his voice low. Powerful people. And I'm going to use that to make sure you're taken care of. No one should be punished for showing kindness. Marie's head spun as she tried to process what he was saying. This could be her big break, but was she just being naive? She had no idea what kind of strings Barron could pull or what consequences this could bring. Barron leaned forward slightly, his eyes intense. But that's not all, Marie. There's something bigger at play here, and you're going to be part of it. We're going to expose the real problem, the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes. I need you to trust me. Her heart raced as the gravity of the situation hit her. He wasn't just offering to help her get her job back, he was offering her a chance to be part of something much bigger, something that could change everything. For a moment, Marie stood there, unsure of what to say or how to react. She had never been in a situation like this before, but something about Barron's sincerity, his conviction, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, this was a turning point in her life. I don't know what to say, she whispered, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. You don't have to say anything right now, Barron replied. But think about it. There's more to this story than you realize, more people involved. I'm going to need your help to uncover the truth. And with that, everything changed. The days following that meeting were a whirlwind for Marie. She had never expected her life to take such an unexpected turn. Just a few days ago, she had been a simple waitress, going about her job, doing her best to make ends meet. Now, she found herself tangled in a web of secrets, power, and political intrigue, all thanks to Barron Trump. Over the next week, Barron kept in contact with her, sending cryptic messages and telling her to meet at different locations, always under the guise of secrecy. He assured her that things were moving fast, but it wasn't safe to reveal too much just yet. Marie couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. Despite Barron's reassuring words, she was scared. She'd never been involved in anything like this before. She wasn't sure what kind of trouble she was getting herself into, or who she could trust. But there was no going back now. One day, Barron sent her a message asking her to meet him at a private office in the downtown area. When she arrived, she was escorted through a labyrinth of hallways until they reached a sleek, modern office with large windows overlooking the city. Barron was already there, waiting. I'm glad you came, he said, standing up to greet her with a serious expression on his face. You're about to be a part of something much bigger than you imagined. Marie felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The seriousness in his tone made her wonder just how deep this rabbit hole went. I know you've been wondering what this is all about, Barron continued, gesturing for her to sit. There are people in positions of power who will stop at nothing to control narratives, to make sure certain truths never come to light. And you've become part of this. Your kindness, your choice to help me, has put you in the middle of something massive. Marie's heart raced. She hadn't asked for any of this. She had just been trying to do what felt right. But now it seemed like her life was about to change forever. I don't want to be part of some big conspiracy or political game, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I just want my job back. I just want things to be normal again. Barron's eyes softened, but there was no mistaking the urgency in his words. It's not just about your job, Marie. It's about standing up against the people who want to control everything. It's about showing the world that kindness, fairness, and justice can still win out, no matter the cost. What you did for me, what you risked, was bigger than just a single action. It's part of a bigger fight. Marie wasn't sure what he meant, but she could see the conviction in his eyes. She knew that if she walked away now, she would be leaving something important behind. And that thought, more than anything else, made her hesitate. I don't know if I'm the right person for this, she whispered, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. You're exactly the person for this, Barron insisted, his voice calm yet filled with purpose. You have something they don't. You have a heart that sees people for who they really are, not for the headlines they're given. And that's what's going to make all the difference. Marie sat back in her chair, overwhelmed by the weight of what Barron was asking her to do. She didn't know if she had the courage, the strength, or the knowledge to fight against the people he was talking about. But one thing was clear. The world she had known was slipping away, and the only choice she had was whether to stand up and fight for something better, or let it all fall apart. She took a deep breath, making a decision in that moment. Okay, she said, her voice shaky but determined. I'll help you. But I need to know exactly what I'm getting into. Barron smiled, a small, knowing smile that said everything. You're about to find out. The following weeks were a blur for Marie. She was thrust into a world of covert meetings, secret messages, and information that made her head spin. Barron had kept his word. He was guiding her every step of the way, showing her the intricate network of people who were pulling strings from behind the scenes, controlling narratives, and ensuring certain truths never saw the light of day. Marie found herself in situations she had never imagined, speaking to people she would have never thought she'd meet. High-powered lawyers, investigative journalists, former government officials, they all seemed to be part of a larger plan Barron had in mind. They didn't talk openly about the full scope of their mission, but Marie could feel the intensity building with every passing day. Something big was coming. One evening, Barron called Marie to meet him at a hotel. The message was urgent, and when she arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Barron was already waiting in the lobby, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a sharpness she hadn't seen before. We need to move quickly, he said, leading her into a private conference room. Things are escalating. People are starting to notice what we're doing, and they won't stop until they destroy everything we've worked for. Marie swallowed hard, the gravity of the situation hitting her once again. What's going on? What do we need to do? Barron sat down across from her, looking directly into her eyes. We've uncovered something that ties together the political corruption, the media manipulation, and the people who have been controlling your life from the shadows. But they know we're getting too close. They're going to make a move soon. We need to be ready. Marie's stomach dropped. She had known this wasn't going to be easy, but she hadn't expected it to feel so real, so dangerous. She had no idea what they were up against, but she could tell by Barron's expression that whatever it wasn't going to be something she could just walk away from. I'm in this with you, she said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. What's the next step? Barron nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. I'm glad you're with me, Marie. The next step is risky, but it's necessary. We need to expose the people at the top, those who think they can control everything and everyone. But we need the evidence. And we need it fast. You're going to be the one to get it. Marie blinked in shock. Me? I don't know if I'm cut out for something like this. I'm not a journalist or a spy. Barron's gaze softened. You've already proven you have the right instincts. You helped me when no one else would, Marie. You saw the truth when everyone else was too blind to see it. That's what we need. I'll give you everything you need to uncover the truth." Barron handed her a folder filled with documents, each page a piece of the puzzle they had been working on. "This is just the beginning. There are bigger forces at play, but we're close. If we can get this information to the right people, we can turn the tide." Marie took the folder, feeling the weight of it in her hands. She knew this wasn't going to be easy, but she also knew she couldn't back down now. There was too much at stake. As Barron stood up to leave, he looked at her one last time. "Remember, Marie, this isn't just about you or me. This is about everyone who's been silenced. About showing the world that we won't let them win. Stay strong." Marie nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She was scared, yes, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was part of something that truly mattered. The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and strategizing. Barron had given her all the tools she needed, but now it was up to her to piece everything together. As she dug deeper into the documents, she began to see the connections, the hidden deals, the backdoor conversations, and the people who were pulling the strings in the shadows. It was worse than she could have ever imagined. But there was no turning back now. The days that followed were filled with tension. Marie couldn't shake the feeling that she was constantly being watched, that every step she took could be her last. The more she uncovered, the more dangerous everything seemed. Barron had warned her, but now she was starting to understand the full extent of what he meant. The people they were going up against were ruthless, and they would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. Marie continued to meet with Barron in private, their conversations becoming increasingly urgent. He had made it clear that they couldn't afford to waste time. Every moment that passed brought them closer to a breaking point. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit together, but they were still missing something crucial, one last piece of the puzzle that could expose everything and bring the corrupt system crashing down. One evening, as Marie sat alone in her apartment, going over the files once again, she received a text from Barron. It was brief, but it sent a chill down her spine. "Meet me. Urgent." Her heart raced as she grabbed her coat and headed out the door. Barron's messages were always cryptic, but this one felt different. There was an edge to it that she couldn't ignore. When she arrived at the meeting spot, a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of town, Barron was waiting for her at a secluded corner booth. He looked more serious than ever before. "Marie," he said, his voice low, "this is it. We've got one shot at this. You need to deliver the documents to the press tonight. It's the only way to make sure they don't shut us down." Marie's mind raced. She had seen the documents, had read the names, the figures, the shocking truths about the people who controlled so much of the world. She had no idea what would happen once the information was out there, but Barron was right. It was their only chance. "Are you sure? What if they come after us?" What if she started to ask, but Barron cut her off, his gaze hardening. "They will. We both know that," he said grimly. "But if we don't do this now, all the work we've done will have been for nothing. The truth has to come out, and you're the one who can make it happen." Marie felt the weight of his words, the gravity of the situation pressing down on her chest. She knew she couldn't back out. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the people who had been oppressed, all the voices that had been silenced by the powers that be. If she didn't do this, no one else would. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear swirling inside her. Barron nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. "I knew you would. But there's one more thing, Marie. Once the story breaks, you'll be a target. You need to disappear. Lay low for a while, until it blows over." Marie's stomach tightened. Disappear? She hadn't thought that far ahead. She had a life, people who depended on her, a future she had dreamed of, but now it seemed like that future was slipping away. "I understand," she said quietly. "What's the next step?" Barron handed her a small envelope sealed tightly. "You know what to do. Get this to the right person. They'll know how to take it from here." Marie took the envelope, her hand trembling slightly as she grasped it. This was it. The moment she'd been preparing for, the moment that could change everything. Before she could say anything else, Barron stood up, his face resolute. "Remember, Marie, once you give this to them, there's no going back. This will change everything for you. But it will also change everything for the world. Marie nodded, a mix of determination and fear in her chest. She knew Barron was right. This was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. She had a role to play in something far greater than herself, and there was no turning back now. As she left the cafe, the weight of the envelope in her hand, she couldn't help but feel like everything was about to explode. What would happen when the world saw the truth? Would it be enough to bring down the corrupt forces at the top? Would it change the way people saw Barron? And would she be able to live with the consequences? Her thoughts raced. But one thing was certain: the final chapter was about to begin, and there was no telling what would happen when the truth was finally exposed. Marie barely slept that night. The adrenaline coursing through her veins kept her up, her mind spinning with all the possible outcomes of what she was about to do. Delivering the envelope to the right person was only the beginning, but she couldn't stop thinking about the risks. If she was caught, everything she had worked for, everything Barron had put her through, would be for nothing. The powerful forces that would be after her were not to be underestimated. She knew the moment she handed over the envelope, her life would change. There would be no more safe spaces, no more normal days. The people at the top would stop at nothing to ensure their secrets stayed hidden, but that was why Barron had put his trust in her. She was the one who could make the truth known, and in that moment she decided there was no turning back. The next day, Barron called her again, his voice tight with urgency. "Marie, they know. They're coming after you. Don't trust anyone, not even the people you think you can count on. You're too close to the truth now. They're going to try to shut you down before you can even hand over the documents." Marie felt her heart skip a beat. Panic surged through her veins, but she pushed it down, focusing on what needed to be done. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice trembling but determined. "Follow the plan we discussed. Go to the safe house. It's the only place you'll be safe. You've got to lay low for a few days, at least until the story breaks. But don't wait too long. The longer we wait, the harder it'll be to stop them." Marie's pulse quickened as she took in the gravity of his words. She had no choice now. The truth was within reach, but so was the danger. She grabbed her bag and left her apartment, her mind racing with every possible scenario. Barron was right. She couldn't trust anyone. The stakes were higher than ever. She made her way to the safe house, a secluded cabin on the outskirts of town. It was meant to be temporary, a place to hide until the storm passed. But Marie knew she couldn't just sit around and wait. She had to act fast. As soon as she arrived, she locked the door behind her and called Barron again. "I'm here. What's the next move?" "There's a journalist, someone you can trust. He's been following the story for months, and he's the one who can take the documents to the press. But you can't go to him directly. He's too exposed. We have to set up a meeting, a secure location." Marie felt a knot form in her stomach. Another person she had to trust. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized she had no other choice. She had come too far to back out now. Barron gave her the details of the meeting. The time, the place, the precautions. She had to stay hidden, keep her movements secret. The fewer people who knew, the better. As she hung up the phone, her thoughts turned to the documents in her bag. She had the power to change everything, to expose the corruption, the lies, the manipulation. But she also knew that once the truth was out, there was no going back. The world would never be the same, and neither would she. Later that evening, Marie made her way to the meeting spot, a secluded alleyway behind a small cafe. The area was empty, the perfect place for a covert exchange. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she waited, the weight of the envelope a constant reminder of what she was about to do. Minutes later, a figure appeared in the shadows, a man she had never seen before. He was tall, his face obscured by the dim light, but there was something about the way he moved that gave Marie a sense of reassurance. She handed him the envelope without a word, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. The connection was brief, but it was enough. She knew the information was in safe hands now. The man nodded and turned to leave, but before he could disappear into the shadows, he stopped and looked back at her. "You did the right thing," he said quietly, his voice steady. Marie watched as he disappeared into the night, the weight of the moment sinking in. She had done it. The truth was finally out. But as she turned to leave the alleyway, a sudden noise behind her made her freeze. Someone was following her. Her pulse spiked as she hurried her steps, but she could hear the footsteps growing closer. She turned the corner, trying to lose the shadow in the dark. But as she glanced over her shoulder, she saw the figure closing in too close, too fast. Marie's heart raced as she broke into a sprint, her mind racing for a way out. But the figure was relentless, gaining on her with each passing second. Just when she thought she couldn't outrun him any longer, she heard a voice. "Marie." It was Barron's voice. She turned around to see him, rushing toward her, his face tense. He reached her just as the figure was about to grab her, and without hesitation, Barron pushed the person aside, his strength surprising her. "Get in the car," Barron ordered, his voice low but urgent. Marie didn't need to be told twice. She jumped into the car, Barron following close behind. As the car sped off into the night, she looked out the window, her breath coming in quick gasps. The danger wasn't over yet. But for the first time, she felt like she had done the right thing. The truth was out there now, and the world would never be the same.